Hello everyone and welcome to the Commexis Cast Daily, all the news you need to know from our inbox to yours. We're talking about today, eMarketer's newest social forecast. Hello everyone, I'm Matthew McGrorty, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I'm joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Phillip Brooks.
You may not recognize me because I'm wearing a sport coat, but it is indeed me.
You were looking quite spiffy today, Phillip. So as I mentioned before, we're talking about eMarketer's social forecast, and they're showing some shift in platform use. So just in general, nearly 200 million people, or 60.5% of the US population, will use a social network at least once a month this year, which is up 2.6% over 2017. Facebook, let's start with them. So Facebook is at the top, obviously reaching 60.6% of internet users, though eMarketer expects that there will be a decline of teen users, which will drop Facebook's reach to, get this, 60.2%.
I was going to say, there will be. That's already happened, and if it's that small of an increment, I can't believe that it's even worth reporting on.
Yeah, so the number of Facebook users is going to rise 0.9% to 169.5 million in 2018, which will mostly be the adoption of older users to the platform and older age groups. However, there's going to be a decline between 5.6% and 9.3% among users under 25, which will total 2.1 million lost users. So I guess that gives a little more context of that 0.4%. So what do you think is causing this loss of younger users?
I think it's just simply not the platform for them anymore. It's been, you said it yourself, there's bringing people in from older age groups, their parents, grandparents. They don't want to be on the same place that their parents and grandparents are, especially when they're going to be regularly exposed to the political views of those folks. And we've seen and if you are on Facebook now and you're seeing some of the reactions that we saw to the school walkouts yesterday and things like that, you can see how polarizing that sort of thing would be. And being on that same platform with your parents or your grandparents and seeing some of those interactions between people on both sides of the aisle on that issue, I can see why there's no way in heck I'd want to be on there with my parents. That would be horrific.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I also think to some extent when we talk about Twitter and Instagram and being able to, I feel like, at least in my experience, and I feel like some people my age, when we were growing up through college and kind of, using Facebook, probably a little bit less, the thing was that Twitter and Instagram, we could be a little more candid than you can be on Facebook because your family is on Facebook and you have to present a certain face. I also wonder if there's a pressure to, even when you see, those political views and stuff like that, I feel like there might be on Facebook a pressure to stay friends with people who you knew to some extent, just because, it's Facebook and you want to relatively stay in touch.
Sure.
Whereas Twitter's more, this is what I actually want to see.
I think, and prior to us going on the air, Matt and I were talking about this, and we both discussed the same thing, where it's like, Facebook is primarily a medium that we use to keep in touch with people from our past, that, high school, even scarier, elementary school, whatever, you have all these people that, so you do feel sort of that, because this is the only way you stay connected with those people. And so if you think about it that way, there are a lot of people on there that I appreciate speaking to now, and I like seeing being part of their lives to some extent. But if it weren't for that medium, I don't think I'd know anything about them. You know what I mean?
So that's a good point.
And it's sort of invalidated the whole idea of the high school reunion and all that stuff, because everything you need to know. And as Matt said, and we were talking earlier, you're probably still friends with the people you want to be friends with from high school.
Yeah.
So unless you're reaching out to somebody that's been like a long lost friend, that maybe they disappeared for a while, they were stuck on an island or something, maybe that way you find out what happened to them since. But everybody else you're probably already in touch with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I remember my sister, she's, I think, 10 to 12 years older than me. I don't remember the specifics. But she recently, a year or two ago, had a high school reunion, and she decided to make a Facebook event with just like 10 people she knew from high school that she actually wanted to go and see how they were doing. Some of which were friends people she was still friends with, some were just acquaintances. But I think you have a great point in that, people are going to stay in touch with people they want to, and who needs to go to this massive reunion when maybe you only want to see 10 people.
Right. But to your point, that's kind of why people, I think, are a little more protective of their presence online on that platform because of that reason, because they don't want to necessarily alienate these people that see them or think of them in a certain way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, moving on to Snapchat. By the end of this year, eMarketer predicts that 68.0% of internet users ages 12 to 17, I don't know why I put 0.0% there, but anyway, will be using the platform. Penetration in this age group will outstrip that of Facebook and Instagram, which is 47.2% and 43.6% respectively. So we have talked before on the podcast about how Snapchat, if you're trying to reach this younger audience, there's really no better way than through this platform, and to some extent a little bit through Instagram, because there's a high population there as well. And we've also talked in the past about Snap testing out some programs for brands and people who are looking to advertise on the platform. And then they've also done some other things like the redesign, which had some mixed reviews, though everybody seems to be kind of okay with it now. And all these other things, they're branching into self-serve ad platforms. They're branching into programmatic and all that things. And before we've talked about how maybe if you have additional money, Snapchat's a good place to experiment on it. Do you think that is still the truth? Should people be maybe more interested in checking and seeing what they're going with?
Yeah, well, I think right now the biggest hurdle for Snapchat is that we don't know how their analytics work. We're not getting that kind of data back. So if you're a company like ourselves, where we're kind of responsible for showing an ROI to our clients, it's hard to authorize, let's experiment with Snapchat and see what happens. Unless we're dealing with a particular kind of brand where it's either an e-commerce or retail that would be hitting that demographic consistently. I don't know that it's worth that kind of pitch, but and the good thing about Snapchat is they do the geofencing. That was one of the first platforms that offered that as a tool. But until we can really get our heads in there and see what the analytics tells us, I'm still a little cautious about using it, again, unless by necessity, because I'm dealing with a demographic that only works within that platform. I would be a little leery of throwing money at it, unless, like you said, like Matt said, but who really has money that they're just like, throw it away. So we would double down on, in that case, if we had a surplus left over, we would just double down on Facebook.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I like reading about how Snapchat is doing in regards to expanding different ad platforms, stuff like that, because I do like Snapchat, and I think it has its niche, and it has the things that you can do on the platform that you can't really do on other platforms as well. But I do think it has a lot of problems, and that's really going to be hurting it for use for advertising for brands and stuff like that. Though they have done a lot of cool things. If I get a chance to find them, I will link them in our blog post. But I remember, I think Air Jordan had a pre-sale using a snap code at a game or something, and then you were able to snap the snap code, and then you could just buy them there, and they sold out like immediately. So there's cool things that you can do with Snapchat, as Phillip mentioned, especially with the geofencing and stuff like that, but we'll just have to see what they're able to show us in the future. Finally, Instagram. The only stat that eMarketer really had about Instagram was that their user base is going to increase 13.1%, which is quite a jump, to 104.7 million. They're expecting that people 35 and older who are creating profiles and connecting with typically younger family members who are less active on Facebook are primarily responsible for this growth. And I think we did talk about this.
Yeah, look, your generation is approaching the age where they're starting to have kids, and it's a great medium to be able to show those pictures and share them with your family. That's essentially what I do with it. And it's nice to have those filters and fun things you can do with the pictures as well. But being a primarily visual medium, I think that's probably behind the majority of the growth there. And just because, again, I think that people below that certain age that aren't of the older are kind of migrating to Instagram. So like the top end of generation Y, I think they're sort of migrating over to Instagram and away from Facebook too. So I think you'll see that continue to grow. I don't know if they'll ever necessarily be equal, but basically they're the same platform because how we treat them for advertising's sake. But
it's true.
So
I'm interested in seeing if this sort of increase in an older user base is going to cause the problems that people have with Facebook, which is they feel like all of their family members are following them on Instagram. I feel like just because it's it's such a different medium than Facebook, and that it is so visual. I feel like that maybe won't happen, because at the end of the day, people will always have their Snapchats, especially for the younger audience, and I guess their Twitters as well.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I think, as a visual medium, people are probably a little bit smarter about what they think people can see, as opposed to what you write. I mean, if you're writing text-based things, that can be interpreted in a number of different ways, but a picture worth 1,000 words. So if you're posting pictures of you chugging a beer and then your family follows you, I think it's on you.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to today's episode of the Commexis Cast Daily. Check us out tomorrow for more of the latest trending news. Have a great day.